Hey guys, so about a year ago I made a video on Nine Inch Nails, and the track that I made was very much like Broken EP, Downward Spiral, like typical 90s industrial metal. Today I want to do Nine Inch Nails again, but we're going to go all out. We're going to capture everything that I love about Pretty Hate Machine, Broken, Downward Spiral, and in particular The Fragile, because that's my favorite Nine Inch Nails album, and there are some really cool tips I can give you with that album as well. So we're basically going to recreate the iconic Trent Reznor sounds from all those eras, and I'll break them all down for you as we go. So I have a bunch of my own Nine Inch Nails inspired sounds loaded up here in Cubase. We're going to start with this guy. So first off, we're going for 74 BPM. Super slow, stompy, and we're going for the key of E, and I'm just going to program a bass note just like that. Now to break down this sound quickly, I've used this sound in previous videos, and one of the big lessons today is going to be one of the things I talk about a lot in these videos. Never overlook the stuff that you have, the free stuff, the stock sounds in your DAW. So this, it's just kind of like a 90s dancey, intense kind of synth, but we're running it into all these effects, quite a bit of distortion to make it more intense. Then this chopper, which is basically a tremolo, whoa, 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 you know, instead of it just being a straight note. And then we're taking that way further. So we have like stereo images to make it wider and some EQ, but the main thing changing this sound is a step filter. So this is just like a multi-mode filter. You probably have one in your DAW already, and it just focuses on different frequencies from one moment to the next. So already for me, that's very Nine Inch Nails because Trent loves filtering. He loves kind of interesting synthesis. To me, that's a very 90s sound because it's very digital, but very like straightforward. And we're just going to loop it like that. And I'm just going to copy that and put it on this track. And this is just a really powerful subby 808 in initial audio. The Fragile in particular is one of the bassiest albums I've ever heard, especially for 1999. The bass on that album is insane. Production in general on it is insane, but for me that isn't Trent Reznor enough. So we need to destroy it a little bit. So again, we've got a stereo imager, just making it wide. But the main thing you can hear is this bit crusher. This is the kind of thing most producers would never do because it's just destroying the sound, but it's the kind of thing Trent loves to do because it's just breaking all the rules. It just sounds kind of bad. It's too much, but that's what Trent likes to do. To me, it's unmistakably Nine Inch Nails, just a destroyed sounding synth. And so those two together now, already super nasty, and we're just getting started. All right, now I'm just going to add like this standard digital kick that I've been using in all the recent videos. So you may recognize this just from a Ghost Hack sample pack that was free. And I've just pulled the top end out of that so that it's not like in your ears too much. I want to keep it intense but kind of subdued so that when we drop it a bit heavier, it really hits. All right, and now it gets a little more interesting. So we have a stock 80s kit in Cubase. I've never used this before, but I wanted to find some kind of Pretty Hate Machine style sounds for this. So I thought, you know, the sounds on that album, as cool as it is, are very like basic 80s drum machine sounds. So I took a look at this and I mean, straight off the bat, that kick, that snare, you know, that's so Downward Spiral. So and we'll add some hats. And once again, as Nine Inch Nails as that already is, Trent would not leave it there, so I'm not going to. We're going to do basically the same treatment we did with the 808. Straight into Decapitator to kind of just fuck it up a bit. Into a Bit Crusher to just completely destroy it. Stereo imager again. I just want this to feel huge. Everything about Nine Inch Nails feels huge, so you're going to be seeing this stereo imager a lot. Vinyl to make it feel old and destroyed, and some reverb again to make it feel wide and huge. And then what I'm going to do is automate it so that it starts super quiet. And just bring it up like that. So these sounds are basically there as a texture to just give us that like bit of 80s industrial kind of synth pop. But then also we've got the hats in there to kind of keep it a little more interesting. We want the intro to be chill, but we want to have some movements. All right, now we're going to bring in Vital. I'm going to use a bass synth just to add another texture in the intro. And I really like this sound of mine because it glides between notes, which is kind of a Fragile type of thing. Like to me, it just feels like this creeping like demon because of the way it slides up. So as usual with Vital, I'm just using some nasty looking waveforms. doing a little bit of filtering, a little bit of automation, running it into obviously distortion at 100% because this is Nine Inch Nails. And of course, that still isn't enough, so we're running it into a guitar fuzz just to make it sound ridiculous. So what I'm going to do with that is just emphasize the end of the second bar. All right, and let's layer that now with this distorted brass synth. So this is, again, a Cubase sound. Kind of like an 80s sounding brassy synth, and Trent uses a little bit of that kind of thing, like... And I'm running that into a bunch of effects to make it more intense. So we have a chorus, we have a guitar fuzz, we have ping pong delay, and some reverb. So now it sounds... So we'll take the exact same thing as that bass synth is doing, copy it over, and throw it up a couple of octaves. So that's just adding like a slight brassy texture on top of the bass and just fattening it up in general so it sounds even bigger. All right, so we've laid that down and now it starts to get super interesting. So you can see I've just copied that over. We're going to repeat the same thing again, and we're just going to build on it the second time round. You know, even after all those synths, it's still a very sparse intro. There's a lot of space here that we can fill. So the next thing we're going to add is this Nemesis drum kit. If you've been keeping up with these videos, you know I love this thing. It's like, it's just a few sounds, but it's just so heavy and I love it, especially for this kind of style. And I'm using this kit in Nemesis called Stompy because it sounds very fragile and kind of hesitation marks to me. So halfway through that intro, we'll bring that in and it's going to be huge. That snare. Still leaving the listener wanting something and not just going all out, but it's getting heavy. And this works really well with that 80s kit because we bit crushed that into oblivion. So it's just kind of like a thin texture in like the higher mid-range. And this Nemesis kit can just take all of the low end without interfering with that 80s kit. All right, and now is where the fun really begins. I'm gonna add some funky bass because Nine Inch Nails is not all nasty, like Trent likes to get funky, so that's exactly what we're gonna do with some hard slapping. So we're using two different bass sounds, which I'll break down for you in a minute, but first let's just get something tracked. So I'm not double tracking, it's just two sounds working together. We have this kind of grungy one. Almost like a Tool bass tone, like super grunty in the low end. My usual go-to, we've got dark glass into the Mark bass with a bunch of EQ just to shape it, taking a lot of the top end off so that it's kind of not sticking out too much. Then we have like a Pretty Hate Machine inspired sound, kind of like Sanctified is what I'm thinking with that. So that has more of like the cold, spacious reverb of Pretty Hate Machine, and also kind of the really funky, like less distorted and more just like popping in the high mids. Very Nine Inch Nails, and it works with all this stuff. I just want to jump in, guys, and say if you're enjoying this video, hit the like, subscribe with notifications on so that you don't miss all the videos I have coming up. As always, this track and all my others will be available in the description if you're an artist or a vocalist looking for tracks. And if you want to directly work with me one-on-one, hit me up in my email or Instagram below. That being said, let's get back into it. All right, now we're going to bring in this, I've called it B-synth because it sounds like a bee or a wasp. It's that same bass sound we originally used, but I've turned the bit crusher all the way up. There's a lot of detuning. And this is not going to be a melodic sound. I'm thinking like Trent, so this is a texture. You know, it's all about getting the listener feeling uncomfortable and just adding a bunch of textures. I do feel like Trent Reznor almost is like an anti-melody person. Like, I feel like he builds a song just by adding more and more textures to make you feel a certain way, and eventually he'll find like a song in there. And I'm just, again, going to take the same notes. And we're not developing it melodically at all. It's just a bee or wasp. So it goes from that to... You know, you can just hear that kind of discomfort and detuned kind of sound. Subtle things like this that Trent does where he'll sneak something in, you go, oh, I'm getting uncomfortable and I can't like figure out why, because it's kind of in the background, but it's there. All right, and we're going to get a little heavier in a minute, but something that I need to still add to this section is something that you don't see often in my videos, but this guy who usually is hanging out back there in the videos is finally making an appearance. And I'm going to basically, if you think about the big come down, I'm going to basically rip that off. I'm going to just do something inspired by that with like a slap guitar. And we're going to do a counter melody to the bass. Right, I'm gonna have to jump on my chair to get like the guitar close to the mic, but let's quickly track this. So it's a very quiet texture, and again, it is kind of a texture more than like a hook. Trent's acoustic recordings I find tend to be very raw, so this is, you know, it's a little bit of compression, a little bit of EQ to take out the low end because we do not need it in this track. Compression so that it's like you can actually hear it and it's consistent. Other than that, it's just on the left and right and that's it. And now you knew it was coming. It's finally time to get a little heavier, and we're going to use the iconic Nine Inch Nails sound that you probably have been waiting for. But before we get to that, I'm going to quickly program something new in with the Nemesis kit. We're going to step it up a little in intensity. So we'll go for more of a stomping kind of vibe. Kicks on every beat. That snare. Hi-hats on every beat. Like so. Keep the 80s kit running. Nice. See what I mean about the blend of like Pretty Hate Machine to the Fragile? Fragile. Pretty Hate Machine. And let's quickly take this kick, the Ghost Tack one, and put it on a separate track that's exactly the same but doesn't have all that top end missing. We're just pulling out some high mids. Alright, so this guitar sound, I think I broke it down in some depth in the last Nine Inch Nails video, so do check that out. But just quickly, so I'm using the same amp I always use. You can use any amp for this kind of sound. The main trick, which is the thing I said in the Nine Inch Nails video before, is don't use a cab. So you can see this guy is turned off, no mics. Another thing that like only Trent Reznor does. No lows, no mid-range, leaves all the space for you to just go crazy with the bass. It's a crude tone, it's just pure distortion, but it's so punk rock, I love it. So we're gonna keep the bass going like that, and we're just gonna introduce this tone and some like dissonant chords. And on the left. That's another Nine Inch Nails trick, kind of chromatic notes, diminished notes. Like that's the root and then the major third, then the minor third. Not something you should really do, and so obviously it's something that Trent loves to do. All right, and finally now we're going to introduce some rock drums. As always, I'm using Get Good Drums. I'll break down the sound in a second, but let's just go quite simple, crash, just noisy. Just add in a bit of punk rock so it's not too like digital. It's got that like human energy to it. Trent likes a lot of room, so we've got the room mic turned up high, we've got the reverb quite high. He definitely likes you to be able to hear that it's a drummer in a room with microphones against the kit. And he likes to fuck things up a bit, so we got quite a bit of distortion on the drums, as you would expect. So again, not the cleanest sounding drums, but it's just noisy and nasty. Now is where we focus back on these guitars. So you know I said how it's a thin sound, it's a thin digital sound, not a lot of mid-range, not a lot of bass. It's just distortion basically. And if you saw the Marilyn Manson video a few weeks ago, we're using the exact same trick. So go check that out if you want to understand the bass sound, but we're gonna just get super nasty with the low end because we've left the space in the guitars so that we can. So we'll directly follow exactly what the guitar does. So that's just filling in the space we had. It's a huge mix at this point, but we had a bit of low end that we could still fill. So that's what this is doing, just getting behind those guitars and making them sound huge. All right, and then two more quick things, then I'll show you the finished mix. I wouldn't really be paying my respects to the Downward Spiral if we didn't have a little bit of ring modulator in there. So the initial tone, just like a 70s rock kind of sound. So then I'm using Graylon to pitch it up an octave. And just give it more of a digital kind of synthesizer-y kind of sound. And then once again, stock Cubase plugin, ring modulator, which is basically just like a synthesizer. Like a ring modulator is, you can get guitar pedals for them. You can get all kinds of awful sounds, not really any nice sounds from them. And so again, obviously Trent is obsessed with them. So let's just lay down a couple of notes with that just to throw it in there because it wouldn't be Nine Inch Nails without a little bit of ring mod. kind of an effect that people have forgotten about, which is a shame. I mean, it's not. It's an awful sound, but it's like, you can do cool things with it. Yeah, hopefully that comes back one day. All right, last thing. I've always loved the synth sound in the song Ruiner. I've never understood how he got that sound, and I didn't spend too long trying to replicate it, so this isn't like super close, but I wanted to get something with that kind of texture. And we'll pitch bend this first note a little bit like that. And then let's change the notes the second time. And with this one, I started with that B synth sound, so the same disturbed bass setting in Cubase. But it's just like a detuned bit crushed synth sound. And then we're just running it into chorus, delay, stereo imager, vinyl, like all stock or free plugins. I'm just like fucking it up. Alright, and that is the general breakdown for you guys of all the sounds I'm using in this to hopefully achieve this kind of like every Nine Inch Nails era sound in one song without it just being a mess. So I'll show you the full mix in a second. There's like a bunch more that I haven't shown you, but I don't want this video to go on forever, so I'm just going to show you the full track right now. Alright, so here's the full mix, guys. Hopefully this has given you some ideas of your own. Thank you as always, guys, for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. So I'll skip through the parts that repeat, but here it is. Everything Nine Inch Nails condensed into one song. Hopefully I pulled it off.